Good morning. It's George from UK Linkology back with episode 2 of my podcast, Link Building Fundamentals. Now, today we're going to be talking about the types of link building. Now, the market is very, very diverse, and so should your link profile. So, from the bottom up, you need to be acquiring links from different types of places, sites, and methods to minimize the footprints that you're leaving for Google to track. Now, the first thing you need to be looking at with a brand new build is a range of directory listings known as citations. There are very, very good services out there that can do this. They're going to basically assess the industry that you're in and reach out to various different databases and build citations for your business. It's something that you can do internally. It's very low cost. You probably want to be reckoning at paying no more than £300 to £400 at most for a decent range of relevant citations. Expert tip with the citations, you need to make sure the data, so your name and address, your postcode, your web address, is exactly the same on every single listing, to the point of not having a space in your postcode, making sure you've got either www or https in your web address. Those tiny details can make quite a big difference. You want Google to be able to crawl all those different pages and see exactly the same information, even the opening hours. Make sure you keep all the login information, because at some point you might change your opening hours, you might change details of the business, you might move premises, and trust me, it's a pain in the ass to have to go back and reset passwords for 300 sites. Moving on, you've got your standard middle tier range of link building. Now we're going to start with link insertions. Now, a link insertion is where you weave a fresh link to your site into an old piece of content. So that might be a comparison article, it might be an existing guest post, which we'll talk about, where content already exists, the page has been indexed and crawled by Google, and you're simply weaving a link into that page. Expert tip on link insertions: make sure the content, first of all, that you're weaving your link into is relevant for your business. The last thing you want to be doing is putting a link that doesn't make sense into a piece of content that doesn't justify its inclusion in the first place. I would also say go one step further and potentially rewrite that page. At Linkology, the service that we have is authority edits, and the whole point of that is to rewrite the full page for HCU, for WEAT, to make sure that the content is properly optimized for users, for Google, and for large language models. Moving on to the next step, which is typically what a lot of link agencies offer, is guest posting. Now, guest posting is where you will pitch a website, make friends with them for the purpose of providing them with a fresh piece of content. Now, that content has come from you in theory, or it's displayed as a piece of content from the site owner. Now, the best thing that you can do, as another expert tip, is something called ghost posting. Now, ghost posting is just a cool name for guest posting, but ultimately the difference is that rather than using some made up obscure contributor's name, you're using either the site owner as the author of the piece of content, or you're using a regular contributor on that website. And the reason for that is that that person's name, their entity, their identity is out there in the web. Google's crawled it, they know they exist. So having that person attached to your content will add additional authority. With all of the links that you're trying to acquire, whether it's guest posts or link insertions, you want to ask the blogger or publisher to internally link to that page from other relevant pages. So don't just post the article or put the link on the page and leave it alone. Make sure that it's supported by a framework of internal links. Ideally, you're going to get the publisher to post the article under their own name. If not, you want to be potentially building an identity around that contributor's name. So if you can author the page, potentially build a website or have pages on your site that talk about contributors so that Google can see it's a real existing person. Now, the next type of link building is called a link exchange. It is what it is, basically. So you build relationships with a site and they link to you and you link back to them. Now, the problem with a link exchange is that it can leave footprints. So the expert advice here is to not to do too many and to be selective about the types of partners that you're doing link exchanges with. I would also suggest not just doing a two-way exchange where You give a link to somebody and they give a link back to you, because Google can see that and sometimes it can cancel itself out. You could look at a 3 or a 4-way link exchange. So I link to Steve, Steve links to Matt, Matt links back to me. That would be a sensible thing to do. Reason being, it minimizes the footprints and you're basically building a series of links that are harder to distinguish. The wider the link exchange, the less it will look like a network. The next type of approach, which is a bit more involved, probably more of an expert type of link building, is asset-led. Now, asset link building sounds really complicated, but it's not. You have something of value that you host on your website. It might be a calculator, a tool, a data set. It may even just be a really, really good informative piece of content, long form, buyer's guide, something that people might want to link to. And of course, you could post it. And if your site already gets a lot of traffic, you might find that people find that page because of the keywords that it ranks for and naturally links to it. Great, you've just done earned link building. But for the most part, you're going to have to hustle a little bit. You're going to have to make people aware that that asset exists and ask them to link to it. Expert tip, find pages on those publisher sites that are similar to the tool that you're talking about, whether it's the same audience, the same industry, and suggest that they weave a link to your tool into a certain paragraph on that page. Make it as easy as possible for that publisher to work with you. And you also might have to be prepared to give them a bit of cash to weave that tool in or to talk about you. It's the way in which it works. That's how the world spins. Bloggers are commercially minded, so you need to be aware of that. So the next aspect that you need to be very, very careful with is something called a blog network. Now, at Linkology, we avoid PBNs, another word for them, like the plague, and we use a 33-point inspection checklist to make sure that the publishers that we work with are not on these networks. That being said, with a caveat that I know a lot of very well-known SEOs that use PBNs very successfully. Some of the clients don't know it's happening, shady, not my business, and some of them do, and they get really good rankings. However, Google's getting smarter and smarter at detecting these PBNs. Now, a tool that's very, very good at screening sites for potential manipulation is LinkGraph by Majestic. LinkGraph will show you a visual representation of the network of links around a site, and you'll be able to see examples of sideways linking. Now, when you're considering using a PBN, obviously do your research, make sure that that provider comes with references, ask to see examples of previous campaigns that they've run to make sure that those sites haven't picked up a manual penalty from Google. It can be very, very powerful, but they do come with a much greater inherent risk of penalisation. One prime example of somebody that did really well with a PBN built a website that sold masks for COVID. Obviously, it was a short-term period, although it felt like it ran forever. They built a website really, really badly, loads of PBNs, but it ranked very quickly and made them an awful lot of money. But that site did get found by Google and it did get shut down. The next thing you need to think about is something called a 301 redirect. Now, the latest Google update, in theory, clamped down on 301s. Now, a 301 redirect is where you have existing authority on the website, whether it's your own, whether you've bought an expired domain, and you basically send that link equity, that value, from that site to another one. Now, the expert tip here is to make sure that you are correlating and pairing the most relevant pages with the most relevant pages. So, for example, if you've got a page on a subject or specific keywords that are related to your industry from the donor site, you want to make sure that you're connecting that to the exact similar page on your site so that there's a reason for that to exist. You can't really get away with just redirecting the whole lot into one page. You need to make sure that you're pairing those up. And actually, in my opinion, if the pages aren't relevant, aren't connected, I wouldn't bother redirecting it. You can potentially create a new page that talks about the merger or the relationship between the two sites and build the balance of those links into that page. But again, I personally would just choose the ones that are most suitable. The best part of link building and the kind of most socially accepted is digital PR. Now, we own a digital PR agency in our group called Reachology. It's very, very smart. It's underwritten by SEO. It's got plenty of planning and attribution and ROI attached to it. So you can see exactly what you're getting for your money, and it's predictable. But digital PR is like the holy grail, the gold dust that you sprinkle on your link profile. Typically, once you've built the ones that I've already talked about, you've built that diverse range, it's nice and varied, and now you're just weaving some links in from tier one press coverage just to show to Google that you're now being picked up by really big mainstream sites and that they should trust you. Now, with digital PR, the methodology of acquiring those links is split down into different ways. So you have something called newsjacking, which is really popular. That's done through media monitoring, where you set up alerts for industries, for speakers, for certain contributors on websites. And as soon as a piece of news breaks that's relevant to your industry, you're pitching that journalist and similar journalists your opinions and your take on that story, so that they also cover that news story, but with greater quality, greater expertise. In the digital PR market, everybody's obviously trying to get one up on everybody else. And as soon as one piece breaks on the Daily Mail, you'll find that 30 other sites will break it an hour, 2 hours later. And you want to be on that wave of visibility. So that is newsjacking, and it's done through media monitoring. The next approach with digital PR is something called thought leadership. So that's where you have an expert in the business, somebody who's happy to put their name and their voice out into the market, and they are commenting on specific issues within the industry. So it might be something legal, it might be legislation, it might be market changes, it might be how AI is impacting their company. There are all sorts of different ways to find natural opportunities to lead the market, and that's thought leadership. Now, another benefit, not just getting a link from thought leadership, is the fact that it will build authority across all sorts of different entities towards your business. If you've got a business owner, or if you're an owner of a company and you're being picked up by Google on all sorts of different websites as a leader, as an expert, that's only going to enforce all the other link building work that you've done and are doing. So that's a really, really good way of doing it. And the third one is earned link building. That's part of digital PR. Now, earned link building is where you are giving a journalist something of real value, normally an asset like asset link building, or it's a data set that you've put together from data mining or harvesting. Things like ONS data, survey data, something that shows market trends. And that can be nationwide, it can be regional, and you can then pitch the most relevant journalists of those most relevant local titles that local data. So if you did a nationwide study on X, you could find the Manchester or the Bristol or the Liverpool data and pitch that to the Liverpool Echo, for example. You would also do earned link building with very specific industry titles, so trade publications, partner sites, anything that isn't going to respond to woolly consumer content. You go to them with business data, business trade information. They're more likely to respond to you with that type of information, as opposed to guest posting where you would say, I've got an article, I want to write something for you, do you want to take me seriously? You're going to open that door with that piece of data much, much more easily. Now, whichever approach you use, and I would implore you to use a blend of those, you need to make sure that you've got a proper strategy with your link building and that you build a varied and diverse link profile. That includes things like the anchor text that you're using, which is the word itself that the link's attached to, and the pages that you're building links into. Typically with things like digital PR, you're going to get a branded link, generic link to your homepage. So you're building a brand authority of digital PR, but with the kind of guest post, ghost post, link insertions, you can normally control the narrative in entirety. So be a bit canny, support the pages that are commercially optimized, look at tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush and figure out which pages are carrying keywords that you care about. And those are keywords which drive commercial intent, are going to find the right customer in terms of conversion and lifetime value. So that's it for now. Hopefully that's been a useful overview. If you would like us to run through the services that we offer, we do all of those that I've just mentioned for clients, done for you service, and the strategy and the assessment for you on the house. Anyway, bye for now. Stay tuned, click and subscribe, and I'll be in touch for episode 3. All the best.